That's a tough one, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we've seen that, like, even back in, in San Francisco, we've seen that as well. That's why usually, and it's really interesting because some folks will participate in the dances, but because they reconcile they might be Christian who also believes the same as your aunties. They don't want anything to do with the paganism.
Yeah.
But they will do the dances.
Yeah.
Because they separate the spirituality and they just see it just as performance. That's just kind of like keeping it on the stage, right? And like and so that's how I've seen some of them reconcile their way of still trying to dance by just keeping it as performance for themselves, so they don't feel like they're doing any pagan practices.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, man, like,
but
I
it's
like
hard
what you
to
mentioned
live
there.
in that dualism. I think that's hard, a hard thing to do, to live in that kind of dualism, because then you're saying that there's a part of me that really I don't want to be.
Exactly.
I think that's I think that creates other issues that might come out in some other way. But look, who are we to judge? I think with your relatives, love them.
No, exactly. I want to. See, that was my thing. That, like, I still love them. But the thing is, I don't know who they were. That's the funny thing, because, like, who? I don't know who was who was supposed to come
thinking,
and whatnot.
This is the place, and teach me, and you're teaching me something that I could find on evangelical TV. I could watch Joel Osteen for that.
Exactly.
Probably Joel Osteen's probably a little bit light. They're probably a little bit more hardcore.
Yeah, they're probably a glacier.
Ooh, my lord!
All right, let's move on from religion.
Yeah, let's move on.
Can we
politics, religion?
I don't know if we can edit that here,
religion,
but
yeah. Well, religion. It's that's why at first when I was kind of talking about prayer, I was kind of like, oh, part of me was like kind of holding back because I didn't want to say the wrong words. But okay, let's face it, man. Spirituality is huge in our culture, and it's huge in the dances.
Yeah, even like even for me, like for me, like I don't dig in the whole spirituality thing, but like even when I do see a prayer, like I remember, like when I see an Igorot prayer or whatever, because it's something that I've experienced when I was younger. Me being non-spiritual or whatever, it still resonates to me, which is quite weird because like for me, like I don't go to church anymore and whatnot, but it's interesting that there's still that aspect of spirituality where I can sort of
right
like accept and whatnot. So it's a very, that's why to me culture is so important, because like I'm just, without it I'd just be another guy or whatever, which is fine, but like is that something that I would accept?
There's a deep religious aspect within the culture that of course we lose over because it has evolved because we've moved away. There's most of us like who have moved away. And so it doesn't hold its framework, but the religion itself is quite important. It doesn't matter how deeply religious you are or how deeply spiritual you are, but what it does is that it creates communities, and it creates communities of faith. And so if you look at like North America, or where you have a lot of different churches, and each one of these churches actually is part of civil society. So you think about like, hey, how did this work within the context of our culture back in the day? Well, because we were practicing these kind of rituals where people were gathering together, it was almost like that was church for them. And when you don't have that, or you don't have that semblance of like a faith community, you don't have things that teach you how to behave. You don't have thing that reminds you of what you belong to. And so not having all those things, what else do you have? These are definitely strong aspects of civil society, being part of like of a community or a faith community. And so, of course, now that we're not, we were separated away, our cultural organizations, our BBACs, and that actually forms part of like the aspect of civil society that reminds us about who we are, what we belong to, how to treat one another. It gives us rules and guidelines for ethics and how to be in this world. And there's a lot of study that goes that just simply being part of like these kind of like communities um, is what holds things together. Uh, it holds things together on such a deep level. So when you look at the breakdown of civil society anywhere in North America, anywhere in Europe, anywhere in the world, you'll notice that if the faith communities are at their weakest points, that's when the culture starts breaking down. That's when you don't have much civil society. And then a lot of arguments can be said that, oh yeah, the religion brings out a lot of war and stuff. Actually, that's actually a misnomer. I think that it actually has brought about a lot more different consciousness and has changed the way human beings have thought about each other. It has challenged us to accept, this great diversity and to love each other more. But of course, you don't have to listen to that, and you could follow some
Well,
other
people
message.
misinterpret it.
Yeah, for sure.
People misinterpret it.